Welcome to tonight. We step into the fog-laden streets of 1920s London, where a chilling mystery awaits at the Moonbridge Museum. Picture grand halls filled with ancient relics, shadowy corridors, and secrets locked tighter than a vault. Our guide? The inimitable Hercule Poirot, whose little grey cells will unravel the enigma of the Vanishing Curator. Settle in, dear listeners, for a tale of deception, deduction, and danger. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and let's embark on this 90-minute journey together. Chapter 1. The Moonbridge Enigma. In the autumn of 1927, London thrummed with its ceaseless energy. Horse-drawn cabs clattered alongside motor cars, and the air carried the crisp bite of falling leaves. Nestled in the heart of Bloomsbury, the Moonbridge Museum stood as a beacon of history, its neoclassical facade guarding relics from empires long crumbled. Egyptian scarabs gleamed in glass cases, Grecian urns whispered of forgotten gods, and medieval tapestries hung heavy with tales of chivalry. At its helm was Dr. Archibald Crane, a man whose name was synonymous with precision. 50 years old, with a hawkish nose, piercing grey eyes, and a demeanour as unyielding as the marble floors, Crane was both the museum's greatest asset and its most formidable presence. Revered by scholars, feared by his staff, he ruled with an iron hand, his obsession with order bordering on tyranny. Yet, on this particular October evening, the museum was anything but orderly. A chill hung in the air, not from the autumn fog seeping through London streets, but from a singular, unsettling fact. Dr. Crane had vanished. No note, no trace, no explanation. His absence was a crack in the museum's meticulously curated facade, and it was this crack that drew the attention of Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective whose reputation for unravelling the impossible preceded him. Poirot had only just returned from a case in Paris, where he'd untangled a web of deceit involving a stolen sapphire. He was savouring a rare moment of repose, sipping hot chocolate in his impeccably tidy flat, when a letter arrived, its elegant script betraying urgency. The sender was Miss Eleanor Price, the museum's deputy curator, a woman known for her sharp intellect and sharper tongue. Her message was cryptic, yet compelling. An irregularity at the Moonbridge Museum requires your expertise, Monsieur Poirot. Time is of the essence. Intrigued by the challenge and the hint of a puzzle, Poirot donned his overcoat, adjusted his pristine Homburg hat, and set out into the misty evening. The museum loomed before him, its columns bathed in the soft glow of gaslights. The fog curled around the steps like a living thing, and Poirot's polished shoes clicked rhythmically on the stone as he ascended. Inside, the grand hall was a cathedral of history, its high ceilings adorned with frescoes of celestial maps, its cases filled with artifacts that whispered of distant lands. A Roman bust stared impassively from a pedestal, its marble eyes seeming to follow Poirot as he crossed the threshold. The air smelled of polished wood and old parchment, undercut by a faint metallic tang, perhaps from the ancient swords displayed nearby. Eleanor Price awaited him near a towering statue of Anubis, her auburn hair pinned tightly in a chignon, her green eyes flickering with unease. She was a woman in her late 30s, dressed in a tailored grey suit that spoke of efficiency rather than vanity. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low but steady, "thank you for coming so promptly. We are in a most peculiar situation." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sure sign of his curiosity. "Mademoiselle, you speak of an irregularity. Précisez, s'il vous plaît. What is the nature of this trouble?" Eleanor's lips tightened. "Dr. Crane, our curator, has vanished. His office was locked from the inside, the key found within, yet he is nowhere to be found. It is impossible." Poirot's eyes gleamed at the word impossible. A locked room mystery. Mon Dieu, this was a challenge worthy of his little grey cells. He requested to meet the museum's key staff, those who might shed light on Crane's disappearance. Eleanor obliged, summoning them to the grand hall, where the flickering lights cast long shadows across the artifacts. First was Reginald Holt, the head archivist, a wiry man in his 40s with thinning hair and spectacles that magnified his nervous eyes. His hands fidgeted as he spoke of an Assyrian tablet recently acquired, which he believed was cursed. "Dr. Crane scoffed at my warnings," he muttered, "but that tablet, it's brought ruin." His obsession bordered on mania, and Poirot noted the tremor in his voice. Next came Lillian Baxter, a young restoration artist whose delicate features and paint-stained fingers belied a guarded demeanor. Her dark curls framed a face that could charm donors, but her eyes darted away when Crane's name was mentioned. "He was demanding," she said softly, "but I saw nothing unusual last night." Poirot sensed a secret beneath her composure. Sir Henry Marwood, the museum's wealthy patron, strode in with the confidence of a man accustomed to command. A robust figure in his 60s with a florid complexion and a penchant for cigars, he dismissed the affair with a wave. "Crane's probably off on some scholarly jaunt," he boomed, though his eyes lingered on Eleanor with a hint of suspicion. His generosity funded the museum, but whispers suggested he sought more than prestige. Clara Henshaw, Crane's secretary, was a study in devotion. Prim and pale, with mousy hair and a perpetually anxious expression, she spoke of Crane with reverence. "He was in his office late, as always," she said, twisting a silver bracelet on her wrist. "I left at 9, and all was well." Her loyalty seemed almost too perfect, and Poirot's gaze lingered on her nervous gesture. Finally, Thomas Blake, the night watchman, limped forward, his gruff demeanor softened by a military bearing. An ex-soldier with a scarred face and a short temper, he claimed to have patrolled the museum at midnight and seen nothing amiss. "Crane was a hard man," he growled, "but I did my job." His limp, Poirot noted, was pronounced, yet his eyes were sharp. As the staff dispersed, Poirot surveyed the hall, his mind already cataloguing details. The Anubis statue's shadow seemed to shift, as if guarding a secret. The metallic tang in the air grew stronger near a display of Mesopotamian seals, one case conspicuously empty. Eleanor mentioned a rare seal, valued at thousands, which Crane had fiercely protected. Was it tied to his disappearance? "Mes amis," Poirot said, his voice soft but commanding, "this is no ordinary vanishing. The order and method of Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth, but first I must see this locked room." Eleanor led him down a corridor, lined with suits of armour, their hollow visors watching their passage. The curator's office was at the end, its heavy oak door reinforced with brass. The key, Eleanor explained, was found inside on Crane's desk. Poirot's fingers traced the lock, his mind whirring. "C'est intéressant," he murmured. "A room locked from within, a man gone without a trace. The little grey cells, they are already at work." He stepped back, his green eyes scanning the corridor. A faint smudge of red clay caught his attention on the floor, alien to London's grey pavements. It was a clue, small but significant, like a single thread in a tapestry. Poirot smiled faintly. "Mon cher," he said to himself, "the game, it has begun." Chapter 2. The crime discovered the Moonbridge Museum on that fog-shrouded October morning in 1927 was a hive of unease. The staff moved through their duties with forced normalcy, their whispers echoing off the marble columns as news of Dr. Crane's disappearance spread. Hercule Poirot, his sharp green eyes missing nothing, stood before the curator's office, its oak door a silent sentinel. The lock, Eleanor Price had explained, was intact, the key found inside on Crane's desk. Yet the man himself was gone, as if spirited away by the ghosts of the artifacts he so meticulously guarded. Poirot, accompanied by Eleanor and his friend Captain Hastings, who had joined him that morning, eager for a new case, insisted on examining the office immediately. Eleanor hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of her grey suit. "It's unsettling, Monsieur Poirot," she said. "The room is exactly as we found it this morning." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his delight in the challenge. "Mademoiselle, the unsettling is where the truth hides. Let us proceed." Thomas Blake, the gruff night watchman, produced the key, his scarred face set in a scowl. He had forced the door earlier at Clara Henshaw's insistence, and now it creaked open to reveal a scene of controlled chaos. The office was a fortress of order disrupted. A heavy mahogany desk stood at the centre, its surface littered with papers, a stark contrast to Crane's legendary precision. A crystal vase lay shattered on the floor, its fragments glinting in the dim light, filtering through a single bolted window. Shelves lined with the leather-bound journals and artifact catalogues stood undisturbed, yet the air held a faint, acrid scent, something metallic, Poirot noted, distinct from the museum's usual polish and parchment. He stepped forward, his polished shoes silent on the Persian rug, and surveyed the desk. A half-finished letter caught his eye, scrawled in Crane's precise hand. The artifact must not leave. It began, trailing off into a jagged ink blot. Poirot's fingers hovered over the page, careful not to disturb it. "C'est curieux," he murmured. "To whom was this addressed, and why was it abandoned?" Eleanor, standing by the door, recounted the morning's events with clinical precision. At 8 a.m., Clara Henshaw, Crane's devoted secretary, had arrived as usual to deliver his morning tea. Finding the door locked, a common occurrence, as Crane often worked late, she knocked and waited. By noon, with no response, her concern grew. She summoned Thomas, who grumbled but complied, using a spare key from the security office to unlock the door. Inside, they found no Crane, only the disarray now before Poirot. The staff, Eleanor admitted, assumed Crane had fled, perhaps due to financial troubles whispered about by Sir Henry Marwood, the museum's patron. Poirot's gaze swept the room, his little grey cells humming. The bolted window ruled out an exit there, its latch rusted from disuse. The walls, lined with oak panels, showed no signs of secret passages, at least not at first glance. Then his eyes fell on a peculiar detail. A smudge of red clay on the rug, its vibrant hues stark against the muted greens and golds. He knelt, peering closely. "Tiens," he said, "this clay is not of London streets, no. It speaks of elsewhere, perhaps an excavation site." Hastings, ever practical, suggested it might be from a visitor's boots, but Poirot shook his head. "The curator's shoes, perhaps? We shall see." He turned to the staff, gathered nervously outside. Clara, her mousy hair pinned tightly, twisted her silver bracelet as she spoke. "Dr. Crane was here last night," she said, her voice trembling. "I left at 9, and he was still working. He seemed preoccupied." Poirot noted her unease, his gaze lingering on the bracelet's rhythmic motion. Thomas Blake, leaning on his cane, insisted he'd patrolled the museum at midnight and saw nothing amiss. "The doors were locked, the windows secure," he growled. "If Crane left, He didn't use the main exits. His limp, Poirot observed, seemed more pronounced under scrutiny, and his eyes avoided direct contact. Lillian Baxter, the restoration artist, hovered at the edge of the group, her dark curls framing a face pale with worry. "I was in the restoration wing until 10, she said, her paint-stained fingers fidgeting. "I heard nothing unusual, just the usual creaks of this old place." Her voice was soft, but Poirot detected a guarded edge, as if she weighed each word. Reginald Holt, the archivist, clutched a notebook, his spectacles slipping down his nose. "It's the Assyrian tablet," he stammered. "Dr. Crane mocked my warnings, but it's cursed. I told him not to display it." His obsession, Poirot noted, was fervent, perhaps too fervent, a distraction from other motives. Sir Henry Marwood, puffing on a cigar, dismissed the affair with a hearty laugh. "Crane's probably off chasing some relic," he said, though his eyes darted to Eleanor, as if gauging her reaction. "He was always secretive about his projects." His nonchalance felt forced, and Poirot marked it as such. Poirot returned to the office, his mind cataloguing the clues. The unfinished letter, the shattered vase, the red clay, the locked door. He examined the desk further, finding a small ledger tucked beneath a pile of papers. Its entries listed artifacts, including the rare Mesopotamian seal Eleanor had mentioned, with cryptic notations about private buyers. Was Crane involved in illicit dealings? Poirot's fingers traced the ledger's edge, his mind racing. He questioned Eleanor privately, her composure faltering under his scrutiny. Dr. Crane was under pressure, she admitted. The museum's funds were strained, and he spoke of a buyer for the seal. I urged him to reconsider, but he was adamant. Her hesitation suggested more, but Poirot did not press yet. A groundskeeper summoned by Hastings mentioned a curious detail. A delivery truck had been parked near the museum's rear exit late the previous night, unusual for a non-delivery day. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Mon cher Hastings," he said, "this truck, it is a thread in our tapestry. We must find its weave." He inspected the rear exit, finding another smudge of red clay near the door, matching the office's rug. The lock here was undisturbed, but a faint scratch on the frame suggested tampering. "Sacre bleu," Poirot murmured. "This is no simple vanishing. We have a crime, perhaps even murder." Hastings, startled, protested. "Murder, Poirot, but there's no body." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The absence of a body, mon ami, is sometimes the loudest clue of all. The little grey cells. They tell me Dr. Crane did not leave this museum willingly. He gathered the staff once more, his voice calm but commanding. "Mes amis, someone among you knows more than they say. The truth, it hides in the shadows, but Hercule Poirot will bring it to light." The group exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of his words settling like the fog outside. Chapter 3. Investigation begins. The morning fog clung to the Moonbridge Museum's windows, casting a ghostly veil over its treasures. Inside, the air buzzed with tension, the staff's whispers echoing off the marble columns like ripples in a pond. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the disarray of Dr. Crane's office, had declared the curator's vanishing a potential crime, perhaps murder. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood at his side, his brow furrowed as he tried to keep pace with Poirot's racing mind. The locked door, the red clay, the cryptic letter, these were the threads of a tapestry Poirot was determined to weave together. To begin, Poirot summoned the museum's key staff to the library, a cavernous room where ancient tomes lined oak shelves and a chandelier cast flickering shadows. The suspects gathered reluctantly, their faces a study in unease. Eleanor Price, the deputy curator, her auburn hair pinned tightly. Clara Henshaw, the secretary, twisting her silver bracelet. Lillian Baxter, the restoration artist, her dark curls framing a guarded expression. Reginald Holt, the archivist, clutching his notebook like a talisman. Sir Henry Marwood, the patron, puffing his cigar with forced nonchalance. And Thomas Blake, the night watchman, his scarred face set in a scowl. Poirot stood before them, his green eyes piercing, his voice calm but commanding. "Mes amis," he said, "the truth, it hides among you. Hercule Poirot will find it, with order and method." He began with Clara, whose devotion to Crane bordered on reverence. "Mademoiselle Henshaw," he said, his tone gentle yet probing, "you were the last to see Dr. Crane, oui? Tell me of his mood." Clara's fingers tightened on her bracelet, the silver catching the light. "He was distracted," she admitted. "He spoke of the Mesopotamian seal, how it must be protected. I heard him arguing with Sir Henry earlier that day. Something about funding." Her voice wavered, and Poirot noted the flicker of fear in her eyes. Was it guilt, or merely loyalty strained by suspicion? Sir Henry, his florid face reddening, bristled at the mention. "Nonsense!" he boomed, exhaling a cloud of cigar smoke. "Crane was always begging for more funds, muttering about some special project. I told him the museum's coffers weren't bottomless." Poirot's moustache twitched. "And this project, monsieur, what was its nature?" Sir Henry shrugged, his eyes sliding to Eleanor. "Ask her. Crane kept her in his confidence." Poirot marked the deflection, sensing a thread of blackmail in the air. Lillian Baxter, when questioned, shifted uncomfortably, her paint-stained fingers twisting a lock of hair. "Dr. Crane and we were close once," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But he ended things abruptly a month ago. Said his work demanded his focus." Her eyes glistened, and Poirot wondered if rejection had bred resentment. "And last night, mademoiselle, where were you?" he pressed. "In the restoration wing, until 10, she said. "I was working on a Grecian vase. I heard nothing unusual." Her hesitation suggested more, but Poirot let it lie. For now, Reginald Holt's interrogation was a study in fervour. "The Assyrian tablet!" he exclaimed, his spectacles slipping. "Dr. Crane refused to heed my warnings. It's cursed, I tell you. Its last owner met a grim fate, and now Crane—" His voice trailed off, and Poirot raised an eyebrow. "A curse, Monsieur Holt? Or perhaps a convenient distraction?" Reginald flushed, clutching his notebook tighter. Poirot noted the man's obsession, wondering if it masked a deeper motive. Thomas Blake, the watchman, was terse. "I patrolled at midnight," he growled, leaning on his cane. "All was quiet. Crane's office was locked, as always." Poirot's gaze lingered on the man's limp, a relic of war, and his evasive eyes. "And you saw no one, monsieur? No truck, no shadow?" Thomas shook his head, but his grip on the cane tightened, betraying unease. Eleanor, questioned last, maintained her composure, though her hands betrayed a slight tremor. "Dr. Crane was protective of the Mesopotamian seal," she said. "It's worth thousands, and he feared theft. He mentioned a buyer, but I urged him to keep it here." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A buyer, mademoiselle? And who might this be?" Eleanor hesitated, then shook her head. He didn't say, only that the deal was delicate. Her reluctance was a clue in itself, and Poirot filed it away. Leaving the library, Poirot turned his attention to the museum's artifacts, his steps deliberate as he navigated the grand hall. The empty case of the Mesopotamian seal drew his eye. Its glass pristine, but its contents gone. "C'est intéressant," he murmured to Hastings. "The seal is missing, yet no alarm was raised. Why?" Hastings, scratching his head, suggested a thief, but Poirot shook his head. "Non, mon ami, a thief does not vanish a curator. This is personal." A groundskeeper, summoned by Eleanor, offered a new lead. "Last night, around 11, he said, I saw a figure near the rear exit. Couldn't make them out. Too dark, but they moved quick, like they didn't want to be seen." Poirot's eyes gleamed. He inspected the rear exit, finding a broken cufflink engraved with an H, half buried in the gravel. "Tiens," he said, holding it to the light. "Sir Henry, perhaps? Or a clever misdirection?" Hastings, ever earnest, suggested confronting Marwood, but Poirot smiled. "Patience, mon cher. The truth reveals itself in time." Returning to Crane's office, Poirot re-examined the ledger found on the desk. Its entries hinted at illicit sales, artifacts funneled to private collectors, the Mesopotamian seal among them. Crane was no saint, Poirot said softly, but was he thief, victim, or both? The red clay smudge, yes, confirmed, matched a sample from a nearby excavation site, suggesting Crane had visited it recently. But why? To meet the buyer, or for another purpose? Poirot paused by the Egyptian wing, his gaze lingering on a sarcophagus, its lid slightly askew. A faint scuff in the dust nearby caught his eye, dismissed by Thomas as a cleaner's oversight. "Mon cher Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low, "the heart hides its truths, but the clues, they whisper to Poirot." He made a mental note to revisit the sarcophagus, sensing its significance. As the day waned, Poirot gathered his thoughts, his mind a mosaic of details. The missing seal, the red clay, the cufflink, the ledger, the shadowy figure. Each suspect had a motive. Clara's loyalty masking fear, Lillian's heartbreak, Reginald's obsession, Sir Henry's financial disputes, Thomas's grudge, Eleanor's secrecy. "Sacre bleu," he said to Hastings. "This is a puzzle of many pieces, but the little grey cells, they will find the pattern." Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. The Moonbridge Museum, bathed in the grey light of an October afternoon, seemed to hold its breath. Hercule Poirot, his sharp eyes darting across the Grand Hall's artifacts, stood with Captain Hastings, pondering the threads of the case. The locked office, the cryptic ledger, the red clay from an excavation site, and the cufflink engraved with an H. Each clue was a piece of a mosaic, but Poirot knew the picture was incomplete, muddled by distractions designed to obscure the truth. "Mon cher Hastings," he said, his voice soft but resolute, "we are chasing shadows, but the truth, it is near. We must separate the wheat from the chaff." Poirot began by revisiting the cufflink, its gleaming H, a bold accusation against Sir Henry Marwood, the museum's patron. He summoned Sir Henry to the library, where the chandelier's light cast jagged shadows on the oak shelves. Sir Henry, his florid face flushed from indignation, inspected the cufflink with a scowl. "Mine, yes," he admitted, "but I haven't worn those in weeks. Someone pinched it from my coat in the cloakroom." His bluster rang hollow, and Poirot's moustache twitched. "Monsieur, a thief of cufflinks is one thing, but a thief of truth, that is what I seek." Sir Henry's eyes narrowed, but he offered no more, only a puff of cigar smoke that hung heavy in the air. Next, Poirot turned to the ledger found in Crane's desk, its entries hinting at illicit artifact sales. The Mesopotamian seal, valued at thousands, was marked for a private buyer. with dates corresponding to the week of Crane's disappearance. Poirot confronted Eleanor Price, the deputy curator, in her office, where maps of ancient sites adorned the walls. Mademoiselle Price, this ledger suggests Dr. Crane was not the saint of scholarship he appeared. What do you know of these dealings? Eleanor's green eyes flickered with unease, her hands smoothing, her grey suit. I knew of his plans to sell the seal, she confessed, but only to save the museum from financial ruin. I begged him to reconsider, but he was resolute. Her hesitation hinted at more, and Poirot noted it, suspecting she guarded a deeper secret. Lillian Baxter, the restoration artist, provided another lead, or distraction. She approached Poirot in the restoration wing, where half-mended vases and faded tapestries surrounded them. I found this in Dr. Crane's desk drawer, she said, producing a folded letter in her paint-stained hands. It was a love letter, penned in Crane's hand, expressing regret for ending their romance. "He wrote this weeks ago," she said, her voice trembling. "It proves he wasn't a thief. He was conflicted, not criminal." Poirot examined the letter. Its wording vague and oddly formal. "Mademoiselle, this letter, it lacks the passion of the heart. Is it genuine or a fabrication?" Lillian's eyes widened, but she insisted it was authentic. Poirot, unconvinced, tucked the letter away, sensing a red herring meant to divert suspicion. Reginald Holt, the archivist, offered his own distraction, his obsession with the cursed Assyrian tablet growing wilder. In the archive room, surrounded by dusty manuscripts, he showed Poirot a leather-bound book detailing ancient rituals tied to the tablet. "Crane mocked me," he stammered, "but this tablet brought doom. Its last owner died under mysterious circumstances." Poirot leafed through the book, its pages brittle and irrelevant to modern crime. "Monsieur Holt, a curse is a tale for the credulous. The truth lies in facts, not fables." Yet Reginald's fervour suggested he might be hiding knowledge of Crane's dealings, using the curse as a shield. Thomas Blake, the night watchman, provided a contradictory clue. Poirot questioned him near the rear exit, where the cufflink was found. Thomas, leaning on his cane, reiterated his midnight patrol saw nothing amiss. But a maid, overheard by Hastings, claimed she saw Thomas near Crane's office at 1 a.m., not midnight. Confronted, Thomas's scowl deepened. "She's mistaken," he growled. "I was checking the east wing then." His limp seemed more pronounced under pressure, and Poirot wondered if his alibi was as unsteady as his gait. Clara Henshaw, the secretary, cracked under Poirot's gentle but relentless questioning. In the grand hall, beside the looming statue of Anubis, she admitted to forging Crane's signature on minor documents to cover administrative errors. "He'd have dismissed me if he knew," she said, twisting her bracelet until it left red marks on her wrist. "But I swear, I didn't harm him." Her confession, while damning, felt incomplete, and Poirot sensed her loyalty to Crane masked a deeper fear. Poirot returned to the rear exit, where the groundskeeper's tale of a shadowy figure and a late-night truck lingered in his mind. He found more red clay near the door, identical to the smudge in Crane's office. A visit to the nearby excavation site, a muddy plot where workers unearthed Mesopotamian relics, confirmed the clay's origin. A worker recalled seeing Crane there 2 nights prior, meeting a man in a dark coat. "They argued," the worker said, "something about a deal gone wrong." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "C'est intéressant. A buyer, perhaps, or a betrayer?" Back at the museum, Poirot examined the empty case of the Mesopotamian seal, its lock expertly picked. A tiny scratch on the glass suggested a professional's touch, not a hasty theft. He also found a cryptic sketch in Crane's coat pocket, tucked away in the cloakroom. The seal encircled by thorns, with initials VL scrawled beside it. Was this Victor Lang, the rival curator Eleanor had mentioned in passing, or another misdirection? Poirot pocketed the sketch, his mind racing. He paused by the Egyptian wing, where the sarcophagus's misaligned lid nagged at him. Kneeling, he noticed more disturbed dust, as if someone had opened it recently. "Mon cher Hastings," he said, "this sarcophagus, it whispers to us. But what does it say?" Hastings, ever practical, suggested it was a storage error, but Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The little grey cells, they suspect otherwise. As evening fell, the museum's shadows deepened, mirroring the case's complexity. The cufflink implicated Sir Henry, but its theft suggested a frame. Lillian's letter felt staged, Reginald's curse a distraction, Thomas's alibi shaky, Clara's forgery a motive, and Eleanor's secrecy a puzzle. The red clay and sketch pointed to an external player, perhaps tied to the seal's buyer. Poirot stood in the grand hall, the Anubis statue looming overhead, and murmured, "Sacre bleu, the plot thickens, but Hercule Poirot, he will not be misled." Narration, warm, suspenseful, inviting. And so, dear listeners, the web of clues and red herrings tightens around the Moonbridge Museum. Is the cufflink a truth or a trap? What secrets does the sketch hold? Join me next time as Poirot navigates this maze of deception. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share where you're listening from in the comments. Until then, keep your eyes peeled and your suspicions sharp, just like our inimitable detective. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The Moonbridge Museum, as dusk settled over its neoclassical facade, seemed to pulse with secrets. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes clicking softly on the marble floors, felt the weight of the case pressing on his mind. The cufflink engraved with an H, the cryptic sketch with initials VL, the red clay from an excavation site, and the ledger hinting at illicit artifact sales had woven a complex web. Yet Poirot sensed the truth was close, hidden behind a veil of deception. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, muttered about the growing complexity. "It's a dashed muddle. Poirot," he said, "how do you make sense of it?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon cher Hastings, the muddle is where the truth hides. We must unravel it, thread by thread." The investigation took a shocking turn in the Egyptian wing, where Poirot's earlier suspicion about the sarcophagus proved prophetic. He had returned to examine its misaligned lid, the disturbed dust nagging at his orderly mind. With Hastings and Eleanor Price watching, he directed Thomas Blake, the night watchman, to open the heavy stone lid. The air grew thick with anticipation, as Thomas, grumbling, heaved it aside. Inside lay Dr. Archibald Crane, his hawkish face pale in death. A ceremonial dagger plunged into his chest. The sight drew a gasp from Eleanor, while Hastings paled. "Good Lord, Poirot," he stammered, "it's murder!" Poirot's eyes gleamed, his calm unshaken. "Oui, mon ami, the locked room was a ruse. Dr. Crane did not vanish. He was hidden." He examined the body, noting the dagger's intricate design, a relic from the museum's Mesopotamian collection. The coroner, summoned hastily, estimated death around midnight, contradicting Thomas's claim of a quiet patrol. Poirot knelt beside the sarcophagus, spotting more red clay on Crane's shoes, confirming a visit to the excavation site before his death. "C'est intéressant," he murmured. "The clay follows him, even in death." The discovery upended the case, transforming a disappearance into a murder. The locked office, Poirot deduced, was staged to suggest Crane had fled. Someone had moved the body to the sarcophagus, a bold act requiring strength and knowledge of the museum's layout. He gathered the suspects in the Grand Hall, where the Anubis statue cast an ominous shadow. "Mes amis," he said, his voice cutting through their unease, "Dr. Crane was murdered, and the killer is among us. The truth, it will not hide for long." Poirot revisited the ledger, uncovering a second hidden notebook tucked inside a hollowed-out book on Crane's shelf. Its entries detailed a plan to sell the Mesopotamian seal to a foreign buyer, with payments already received. The deal was set for the night of Crane's death, suggesting a motive tied to betrayal or greed. Crane was no mere curator, Poirot told Hastings. He played a dangerous game, and it cost him his life. The cufflink, initially pointing to Sir Henry Marwood, took on new significance. Poirot confronted him in the library, where the patron's cigar smoke curled like a question mark. "Monsieur Marwood, your cufflink was found at the rear exit, yet you claim it was stolen. Convenient, no?" Sir Henry's face reddened. "I'm no thief, nor a killer. Someone's framing me." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Then who, monsieur, would wish to cast suspicion on you?" Sir Henry muttered about Crane's financial demands, but his bluster masked unease, and Poirot sensed he withheld a crucial detail: Lillian Baxter's love letter, presented as proof of Crane's innocence, crumbled under scrutiny. Poirot, examining it in the restoration wing, noted inconsistencies in the handwriting. A subtle slant, not matching Crane's precise script. "Mademoiselle Baxter, this letter is a forgery," he declared. Lillian's face crumpled, tears welling. "I wrote it to protect him," she admitted. "He broke my heart, but I didn't want him remembered as a thief." Her motive shifted from romance to desperation, but Poirot wondered if her tears concealed a darker truth. Reginald Holt's obsession with the Assyrian tablet took a new turn. In the archive room, he showed Poirot a letter from Crane, warning him to stop spreading superstitious nonsense about the tablet. "He threatened to sack me," Reginald stammered, his spectacles fogging. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And this gave you reason to wish him harm, monsieur?" Reginald paled, insisting his fear was of the curse, not Crane. Yet Poirot suspected Reginald's knowledge of the seal's sale made him a silent accomplice, or worse. Clara Henshaw, the secretary, grew more agitated when questioned about her forgeries. In a quiet corner of the Grand Hall, she confessed to altering more than administrative documents. She had forged letters to buyers under Crane's orders. "He said it was to save the museum," she whispered, twisting her bracelet until it snapped, a bead rolling across the floor. "I didn't know it would lead to this." Her fear seemed genuine, but Poirot noted her intimate knowledge of Crane's schemes, making her a key player in the mystery. Eleanor Price, pressed about her role, admitted to covering for Crane's dealings to protect the museum's reputation. "I knew of the sale," she said, her voice low. "I helped arrange the meeting at the excavation site, but I swear I didn't know he'd be killed." Her complicity deepened her motive, and Poirot's gaze lingered on her trembling hands. A new suspect emerged, Dr. Victor Lang, a rival curator who had visited the museum days before Crane's death. Eleanor mentioned him reluctantly, noting his bitter feud with Crane over a sabotaged academic appointment. Poirot found a cigarette case near the sarcophagus, engraved with VL. Too convenient, he thought, to be accidental. "Mon Dieu," he said to Hastings, "is Lang the killer, or another pawn in this game?" A groundskeeper's log confirmed Lang's presence near the museum the night of the murder. arguing with a man matching Crane's description. The sketch with VL initials found in Crane's coat now pointed to a confrontation gone wrong. Poirot's mind raced, the clues colliding. The dagger from the museum, the forged letter, the planted cufflink, the cigarette case, the red clay. Each suspect's motive grew clearer. Clara's fear of exposure, Lillian's heartbreak, Reginald's resentment, Sir Henry's financial disputes, Thomas's shaky alibi, Eleanor's complicity, Lang's revenge. Yet the truth remained elusive, a shadow dancing just out of reach. "Sacre bleu!" Poirot exclaimed, standing beneath the Anubis statue. "The little grey cells, they are tested, but they will not fail." Chapter 6. The Revelation. The Moonbridge Museum, under the dim glow of evening lamps, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot prepared to unravel the mystery of Dr. Archibald Crane's murder. The grand hall, with its towering Anubis statue and gleaming artifacts, was a fitting stage for the denouement. Poirot had gathered the suspects: Eleanor Price, Clara Henshaw, Lillian Baxter, Reginald Holt, Sir Henry Marwood, Thomas Blake, and the newly emerged Dr. Victor Lang, in a semicircle beneath the frescoed ceiling. Captain Hastings stood by his side, his eyes wide with anticipation. The air crackled with tension, each suspect's face a mask of apprehension, guilt, or defiance. Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache perfectly aligned, as he began, his voice calm but commanding. "Mes amis, the time has come. The little grey cells of Hercule Poirot have seen through the shadows. Dr. Crane's killer stands among you." He paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the marble floor, and recounted the case's threads. The locked office, the red clay, the ceremonial dagger, the missing Mesopotamian seal, the forged letter, the planted cufflink, the cigarette case, and the sketch with VL Bdos initials. "This was no simple murder," he said, "but a tapestry of deception woven with care to mislead. Yet order and method prevail." Poirot began with the locked room, the initial puzzle that suggested Crane had vanished. The office, locked from within, the key on the desk. "It was a brilliant ruse," he said, "but Dr. Crane was killed there, with the dagger from the Mesopotamian collection, and his body moved to the sarcophagus to stage a disappearance." He turned to Clara Henshaw, whose fingers froze mid-twist on her broken bracelet. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, you were the architect of this deception, oui?" Clara's face paled, her lips trembling, but she said nothing. Poirot continued, addressing the red clay. "The clay, found in the office and on Crane's shoes, came from the excavation site, where he met a buyer for the seal. This was no coincidence. It placed him at the scene of a dangerous deal." He produced the ledger, its entries detailing the seal's sale. Dr. Crane was no mere curator. He sold artifacts illicitly, risking the museum's honor. But who betrayed him? The cufflink, engraved with an H, pointed to Sir Henry Marwood, but Poirot dismissed it. "Monsieur Marwood, your cufflink was stolen, a clumsy attempt to frame you. The real killer needed a scapegoat." Sir Henry's florid face reddened with relief, though his eyes darted nervously. The cigarette case with VL Dashed initials found near the sarcophagus implicated Dr. Victor Lang. Poirot turned to Lang, a lean man with sharp features, who stood at the edge of the group. "Monsieur Lang, your rivalry with Crane was bitter, oui? Yet this case, so conveniently placed, smells of misdirection." Lang's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Poirot's gaze shifted to Lillian Baxter, whose forged love letter had muddied the waters. "Mademoiselle Baxter, your letter was a fabrication, meant to paint Crane as a heartbroken innocent. But your heartbreak was real. and rejection can breed vengeance." Lillian's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "I didn't kill him," she whispered. Poirot nodded, his expression softening. "No, you did not, but you knew more than you said." Reginald Holt's obsession with the cursed Assyrian tablet was next. "Monsieur Holt, your tales of curses were a distraction, oui? You knew of Crane's dealings, perhaps even profited from them." Reginald's spectacles slipped, his hands clutching his notebook. "I warned him," he stammered. Poirot's smile was thin. "Warnings or threats?" Thomas Blake, the watchman, shifted uneasily as Poirot addressed his alibi. "Monsieur Blake, you claimed to patrol at midnight, yet a maid saw you near the office at 1. The sarcophagus required strength to open, strength you possess despite your limp." Thomas's scarred face darkened, but he growled, "I didn't touch him." Poirot's eyes narrowed, sensing truth, but not the whole truth. Eleanor Price, the deputy curator, was last. "Mademoiselle Price, you admitted to aiding Crane's dealings to save the museum. If you knew of the buyer, the meeting at the excavation site, did you know of the murder?" Eleanor's composure cracked, her green eyes glistening. "I helped move the body," she confessed, her voice breaking. "But I didn't kill him. I swear it." Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice was firm. "Your silence, mademoiselle, made you complicit." Poirot stepped to the center of the hall, his voice rising. "The truth, mes amis, is this. Clara Henshaw killed Dr. Crane." A gasp rippled through the group, Clara's eyes widening in terror. "Mademoiselle, your forgeries were not mere errors. Crane discovered you had forged letters to buyers, pocketing a share of the profits. He threatened to expose you, to ruin you. In fear, you acted." Poirot gestured to the dagger. "You took the ceremonial dagger, a weapon you knew well from cataloguing, and stabbed him in his office at midnight." He paced, reconstructing the crime. "The locked room was your masterpiece. You used a duplicate key, kept in Crane's desk, to lock the door after the deed, leaving the original key inside to create the illusion of a vanishing. But you needed help to move the body." He turned to Eleanor. "Mademoiselle Price, you aided Clara, not out of malice, but to protect the museum's reputation. You carried Crane to the sarcophagus, hiding him in the Egyptian wing, where you thought he'd remain undiscovered. The red clay, Poirot explained, was the key. Crane tracked it from the excavation site, where he argued with the buyer, perhaps Dr. Lang, perhaps another. The clay in the office and on his shoes betrayed his movements. The cufflink and cigarette case, he revealed, were Clara's attempts to frame Sir Henry and Lang. You stole the cufflink from Monsieur Marwood's coat, Mademoiselle Henshaw, and planted the cigarette case, taken from Lang's visit days prior. But you overlooked the clay, and your nervous habit, he pointed to her bracelet, now broken, it betrayed your guilt. Clara collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "He was going to ruin me," she whispered. "I only meant to scare him, but he lunged, and the dagger." Eleanor, tears streaming, nodded. "I helped her hide him. I thought it would save the museum." Poirot's expression was stern but not unkind. "The truth, it cannot be hidden, mesdames. It always finds the light." Poirot addressed the others, tying up loose ends. Lillian's forged letter was a misguided act of loyalty. Reginald's curse, a mask for his knowledge of the seal's sale. Thomas's late-night presence a coincidence. He'd been checking a faulty lock. Sir Henry's financial disputes and Lang's rivalry were red herrings, exploited by Clara's cunning. The sketch with VL initials, Poirot deduced, was Crane's warning to himself about Lang's involvement in the buyer's circle, not a direct accusation. Mes amis, Poirot concluded, standing beneath the Anubis statue. The little grey cells never fail. Order and method have revealed the killer, the motive, and the means. Dr. Crane's greed sowed the seeds of his demise, but it was fear that wielded the dagger. The hall fell silent, the weight of his words settling like dust. Chapter 7. Justice Served. The Moonbridge Museum, as twilight cast long shadows across its marble floors, stood in quiet mourning. The grand hall, once vibrant with the hum of artifacts and ambition, now felt heavy with the aftermath of truth. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit as pristine as his logic, stood beneath the looming statue of Anubis, its stone eyes bearing witness to the denouement of Dr. Archibald Crane's murder. Captain Hastings, ever faithful, stood beside him, his expression a mix of awe and relief. The suspects, Clara Henshaw, Eleanor Price, Lillian Baxter, Reginald Holt, Sir Henry Marwood, Thomas Blake, and Dr. Victor Lang, had dispersed after Poirot's revelation, their fates now hanging in the balance. The air, thick with the scent of old parchment and polished wood, carried a sense of finality. Poirot, sipping a cup of hot chocolate procured from a nearby café, reflected on the case with Hastings in the museum's library. The oak shelves, lined with ancient tomes, seemed to whisper of secrets finally revealed. "Mon, cher Hastings," Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant. "The human heart, it hides what the eye cannot see. Greed sowed the seeds of Dr. Crane's demise, but fear wielded the dagger." Hastings nodded, still marvelling at Poirot's precision. "Dashed clever, Poirot. But what happens now? Will Clara face the gallows?" Clara Henshaw, the curator's devoted secretary, had crumbled under the weight of her confession. Her tear-streaked face, framed by mousy hair, had betrayed no defiance as the police, summoned by Eleanor, took her into custody. In the grand hall, moments after Poirot's accusation, she had recounted her crime in halting whispers. "Dr. Crane found my forgeries," she said, her broken bracelet dangling from her wrist. "I'd been skimming funds from the artifact sales he ordered. When he threatened to expose me, I panicked. The dagger, it was there, on his desk. I only meant to scare him, but he lunged and—" Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. Poirot, watching her, felt a pang of pity. "Mademoiselle, the truth, it is a heavy burden, but it must be carried." Eleanor Price, the deputy curator, faced her own reckoning. Her complicity in moving Crane's body to the sarcophagus, a desperate act to protect the museum's reputation, had shattered her composure. In the library, before the police arrived, she approached Poirot, her auburn hair loosened from its tight chignon. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her green eyes glistening, "I thought hiding the body would save us from scandal. I was wrong." Poirot's gaze was stern but kind. "Mademoiselle Price, loyalty to an institution must not outweigh loyalty to justice. You will face consequences, but your honesty now, it redeems you." Eleanor resigned her post that evening, vowing to restore the museum's honor through transparent leadership elsewhere. The police, noting her cooperation, promised leniency, though her career in curation was likely over. The other suspects, cleared of murder, grappled with their own truths. Lillian Baxter, the restoration artist, sat in the restoration wing, her paint-stained hands trembling as she packed her tools. Her forged love letter, meant to protect Crane's memory, had exposed her heartbreak but not her guilt. Poirot visited her, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle Baxter, your heart led you astray, but it was not the heart of a killer. You must forgive yourself." Lillian nodded, tears falling, and vowed to start anew, perhaps in a smaller gallery where her talent could shine without secrets. Reginald Holt, the archivist retreated to his cluttered office, his obsession with the cursed Assyrian tablet now a source of shame. Poirot, inspecting the tablet one last time, found no curse, only Reginald's fear of Crane's wrath. "Monsieur Holt," Poirot said, "your knowledge of the sealed sale made you silent, but not guilty. Use your scholarship for truth, not superstition." Reginald, his spectacles fogged with emotion, promised to catalogue the museum's artifacts with renewed rigour, free of fanciful tales. Sir Henry Marwood, the patron, emerged with his reputation intact, though his cigar smoke carried a hint of unease. The stolen cufflink, meant to frame him, had been a minor scandal, but his financial disputes with Crane were deemed irrelevant to the murder. In a private moment, he pledged a substantial donation to the museum, perhaps to quiet whispers of his involvement. Poirot, accepting a cigar he would never smoke, said, "Monsieur Marwood, generosity is admirable, but transparency is divine." Sir Henry's laugh was hearty, but his eyes betrayed a lesson learned. Thomas Blake, the night watchman, resumed his duties with a gruff nod. His shaky alibi, explained by a late-night check on a faulty lock, cleared him of suspicion. Poirot, noting the man's military bearing, offered a rare compliment. "Monsieur Blake, your vigilance, it serves well when guided by truth." Thomas's scarred face softened, and he limped off to patrol, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Dr. Victor Lang, the rival curator, was exonerated, the cigarette case a plant by Clara to divert suspicion. His feud with Crane, though real, had no blood on its hands. Poirot met him outside the museum, where the fog curled around the columns. "Monsieur Lang, revenge is a poor companion. Let this be your absolution." Lang, his sharp features softened by relief, nodded and left London, his ambitions redirected to a university post abroad. Poirot returned to the Grand Hall, where the Mesopotamian seal, recovered from a hidden compartment in Crane's office, was restored to its case. The ledger and sketch, now in police hands, confirmed Crane's illicit dealings, but the buyer, a shadowy figure from the excavation site, remained at large. Poirot, untroubled, knew his role was to solve the murder, not chase every thread. "Mon cher Hastings," he said, sipping his hot chocolate, "the world, it is full of shadows, but we bring light to this corner of it." The museum, though scarred, began to heal. A new curator was appointed, a scholar untainted by Crane's greed. The staff, shaken but resolute, worked to restore the institution's prestige. Poirot, standing by the Anubis statue, reflected on the case's lessons. The heart, mon ami, it seeks order, but it is chaos that reveals its truth. Clara's fear, Eleanor's loyalty, Crane's greed, they wove this tragedy, but justice, it restores the balance. As he and Hastings left the museum, the fog parted, revealing a starlit sky. Poirot's moustache curved in a satisfied smile. "C'est la vie, Hastings. The little grey cells, they triumph once more." Hastings chuckled, shaking his head. "You're a marvel, Poirot. Care for a pint?" Poirot shuddered delicately. "Non, mon ami. Hot chocolate is the nectar of victory." The case closed. The museum's halls grew quiet and London's pulse resumed its steady beat. Yet the echoes of Crane's murder lingered, a reminder of the fragility of order in the face of human passion. Poirot, ever the observer of such passions, walked into the night, ready for the next puzzle to challenge his brilliance. Chapter 8. Echoes of the Past. The Moonbridge Museum, a week after Clara Henshaw's arrest, stood quieter than ever. Its marble columns bathed in the soft glow of a November dawn. The Grand Hall, once alive with the whispers of artifacts and ambition, now carried a sombre air, as if the stones themselves mourned Dr. Crane's fall. Hercule Poirot, his Homburg hat tilted just so, returned to the museum at the request of its new curator, Dr. Margaret Winslow, a scholar of quiet resolve who had taken the helm to restore its tarnished reputation. Poirot, sipping a steaming hot chocolate in the museum's refurbished tea room, gazed out at the frost-kissed gardens, his mind still tethered to the case. Captain Hastings, ever his companion, sat across from him, flipping through a newspaper. "All's well that ends well, eh, Poirot?" he said, his tone cheerful. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon cher Hastings, the end of one mystery is often the beginning of another. The little grey cells, they do not rest." Dr. Winslow, a woman in her 40s with keen eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour, had invited Poirot to review the museum's security measures, wary of further scandals. The Mesopotamian seal, recovered from Crane's hidden compartment, was back in its case, but whispers of its near theft lingered among the staff. As Poirot and Hastings walked the Grand Hall, the Anubis statue loomed overhead, its stone gaze seeming to follow their steps. "Mademoiselle Winslow," Poirot said, his voice soft but probing, "you fear the past is not yet buried, oui? What troubles you?" She hesitated, then gestured to a stack of letters found in a locked drawer in Crane's office, overlooked during the initial investigation. "These arrived after his death," she said. "They mention a second relic, something Crane never catalogued." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he examined the letters, written in an elegant, unfamiliar hand. Each hinted at a rare artifact, possibly a companion to the Mesopotamian seal, hidden within the museum. One letter, signed only with a cryptic symbol, a crescent moon, warned, "The second relic must remain unseen, or ruin will follow." Poirot's fingers traced the symbol, his mind racing. "C'est curieux," he murmured. "A new puzzle, perhaps tied to Crane's dealings." Hastings, peering over his shoulder, frowned. "Another thief, Poirot? Or just a prank?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The truth, mon ami. It whispers in the shadows." To understand the museum's state, Poirot sought out the remaining staff, their lives altered by the case's fallout. Lillian Baxter, the restoration artist, had stayed on, her delicate hands now restoring a cracked Egyptian vase with renewed focus. In the restoration wing, surrounded by the scent of turpentine and old canvas, she greeted Poirot with a shy smile. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "I'm trying to move forward. The museum feels lighter now." Poirot nodded, noting her steadier demeanour. "Mademoiselle Baxter, the heart heals when it faces the truth. But tell me, have you heard of this second relic?" Lillian's eyes widened, then she shook her head. "Only rumours. Crane was secretive about certain acquisitions." Poirot marked her sincerity, but sensed she knew more than she realised. Reginald Holt, the archivist, was reorganising the archive room, his obsession with the Assyrian tablet replaced by a quieter diligence. His spectacles gleamed as he showed Poirot a newly catalogued ledger, free of Crane's illicit entries. "I've learned my lesson," he said, his voice steady. "No more curses, just facts." Poirot, leafing through the ledger, paused at a faded note mentioning a lunar relic stored off-site. "Monsieur Holt, this note, it aligns with the letters. Where is this storage?" Reginald frowned, recalling a warehouse near the excavation site. Poirot's moustache twitched, a lead worth pursuing. Sir Henry Marwood, the patron, was overseeing renovations in the Grand Hall, his cigar smoke curling around a new display case. His donation had funded repairs, and he greeted Poirot with a hearty clap on the shoulder. "No more scandals, eh, Poirot?" he boomed. Poirot, dodging the smoke, inquired about the crescent moon symbol. Sir Henry's brow furrowed. "Crane mentioned a lunar artifact once, said it was too dangerous to display, thought he was being dramatic." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Danger, monsieur, is often a matter of perspective." Thomas Blake, the night watchman, patrolled with a steadier gait, his limp less pronounced in the wake of his exoneration. By the rear exit, where the cufflink had been found, he nodded to Poirot. "All quiet now, sir," he said, his scarred face softened by gratitude. Poirot, inspecting the lock, asked about unusual visitors. Thomas recalled a cloaked figure lingering near the excavation site days after Crane's death, carrying a satchel. "Didn't think much of it," he admitted. Poirot's mind sparked. Could this be the letter writer, seeking the second relic? Poirot visited the excavation site, a muddy plot where workers sifted through Mesopotamian relics. The red clay, so pivotal in Crane's murder, crunched underfoot. A foreman confirmed Crane had visited often, once with a man in a dark coat who carried a crescent-shaped pendant. "They argued," the foreman said. "Crane said something about keeping it hidden." Poirot's fingers traced a clay sample, matching the earlier clues. The crescent moon symbol, he deduced, tied to a relic Crane had concealed, perhaps to protect or exploit. Back at the museum, Poirot examined the storage records, finding a reference to a locked crate in a Bloomsbury warehouse labelled Lunar Relic. He and Hastings visited the warehouse, a cavernous space filled with crates and dust. The crate in question was sealed with a crescent moon emblem, its contents a mystery. Poirot, wary of tampering, left it untouched but noted its location. "Mon cher, this relic, it is a shadow of Crane's greed. We must learn its secret, but with care." Dr. Winslow, informed of the find, promised to secure the crate under museum oversight. "No more secrets," she said firmly. Poirot nodded, but his mind lingered on the cloaked figure and the crescent moon. Was this a new thief, a remnant of Crane's buyer, or a ghost from his past? "Sacre bleu," he murmured to Hastings. "The case is closed, yet the echoes persist." As they left the museum, the fog parted, revealing a crescent moon in the sky. Poirot's eyes gleamed with the thrill of a new puzzle. Mon ami, the little grey cells, they sense another mystery. But for now, the museum is at peace. Hastings chuckled. "You'll never stop, will you, Poirot?" Poirot's smile was serene. "The truth, Hastings. It calls to Hercule Poirot, always." The museum, under Dr. Winslow's steady hand, began to reclaim its glory. The staff, chastened by the past, worked with renewed purpose. Yet, the crescent moon letters, locked in Poirot's briefcase, hinted at a story untold, a relic hidden, a figure in the shadows. For now, justice had prevailed, but the museum's secrets, like its artifacts, whispered of mysteries yet to come. Chapter 9. The Crescent Moon's Shadow. The Moonbridge Museum, under the pale glow of a November evening, stood as a sentinel of history, its neoclassical facade masking a restless undercurrent. Hercule Poirot, his Homburg hat tilted with precision, had returned at the behest of Dr. Margaret Winslow, the new curator, whose steady hand was guiding the museum toward redemption. The discovery of cryptic letters mentioning a second relic, marked by a crescent moon symbol, had piqued Poirot's curiosity, suggesting Dr. Crane's illicit dealings extended beyond the Mesopotamian seal. Captain Hastings, ever eager, joined him in the museum's tea room, where the scent of Earl Grey mingled with the faint tang of old parchment. "Another case, Poirot?" Hastings asked, his eyes bright with anticipation. Poirot's moustache twitched. Mon cher Hastings, the past, it does not rest easily. The little grey cells, they sense a shadow yet to be unveiled. Dr. Winslow, her keen eyes shadowed with concern, met them in the grand hall, where the Anubis statue cast an imposing silhouette. She produced a new letter, found slipped under the museum's rear door that morning, its elegant script identical to those Poirot had seen. The lunar relic must remain hidden, it read, signed with the crescent moon. Its discovery will bring ruin. Poirot's fingers traced the symbol, his mind cataloguing its implications. Mademoiselle Winslow, he said, this is no idle threat. We must find this relic before another tragedy strikes. Hastings, peering at the letter, frowned. But what is it, Poirot? Another seal? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, mon ami, or something far more dangerous. Poirot began his investigation by revisiting the warehouse near the excavation site, where a crate marked with the crescent moon emblem had been found. The cavernous space, filled with crates and the musty scent of neglect, felt like a tomb of forgotten treasures. Dr. Winslow had secured the crate under lock and key, but Poirot, with a policeman's assistance, opened it to reveal a small, intricately carved obsidian box, its lid etched with a crescent moon. Inside lay a silver amulet, its surface inscribed with ancient cuneiform. C'est magnifique, Poirot murmured, but also perilous. This amulet, it is no mere artifact. He noted its weight, heavier than expected, suggesting a hidden compartment. With care, he refrained from opening it, suspecting its contents held the key to the mystery. Back at the museum, Poirot consulted Lillian Baxter, whose restoration expertise might shed light on the amulet. In the restoration wing, surrounded by half-mended vases, she examined the piece with awe. It's Mesopotamian, likely a ceremonial object, she said, her paint-stained fingers tracing the cuneiform. The inscriptions mention a guardian of secrets. Crane never catalogued this. It must have been his private acquisition. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Mademoiselle, did Crane ever speak of such a guardian? Lillian hesitated, then recalled a cryptic remark. He said some relics were too powerful to display. Her sincerity rang true, but Poirot sensed her memory held untapped clues. Reginald Holt, now a diligent archivist, was summoned to the archive room. His former obsession with curses had given way to meticulous scholarship, and he produced a dusty journal referencing a lunar amulet tied to a Mesopotamian cult. It was said to hold a secret that could sway empires, he said, his spectacles gleaming. Crane dismissed it as myth, but he was secretive about a crate he stored off-site. Poirot's moustache twitched. Monsieur Holt, myths often cloak truths. This amulet, it was Crane's final secret. Reginald's hands trembled, suggesting he feared its implications. Poirot questioned Thomas Blake, the night watchman, about the cloaked figure seen near the excavation site. By the rear exit, where red clay still lingered, Thomas rubbed his scarred face. Saw him again last night, he admitted. Same cloak, same satchel, lurking near the warehouse. Thought he was a vagrant, but he moved too quick. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Monsieur Blake, this figure, he seeks the amulet. We must be vigilant. Thomas nodded, his cane tapping with resolve. Sir Henry Marwood, the patron, offered little but bluster. In the grand hall, his cigar smoke curling around a new display case, he scoffed at the amulet's significance. Crane was always chasing legends, he said. This lunar nonsense is just another of his schemes. Poirot, dodging the smoke, pressed him about the crescent moon symbol. Sir Henry's face clouded. Saw a pendant like that once. On a dealer Crane met at the excavation site. Shady fellow, foreign accent. Poirot filed the detail away, suspecting the dealer was the letter writer. Dr. Winslow shared a new clue. A groundskeeper's report of a broken lock at the warehouse discovered that morning. Poirot and Hastings returned, finding faint scratches on the crate's lock, suggesting an attempted theft. Nearby, a discarded cigarette bore the same brand as Dr. Victor Lang's case, though Lang had left London. Sacre bleu, Poirot murmured, a ghost from the past or a new player? The cigarette, he deduced, was another plant, meant to mislead. Poirot's investigation led to the excavation site, where the red clay linked Crane to his fatal meeting. A worker recalled a man with a crescent moon pendant, arguing with Crane about a final payment. The man's description, tall, cloaked with a foreign accent, matched Sir Henry's dealer. Poirot found a torn scrap of paper in the clay, inscribed with the same cuneiform as the amulet. "Mon cher Hastings," he said, "this amulet, it is the key to Crane's death, and this new threat. It holds a secret worth killing for." Back at the museum, Poirot pieced together the puzzle. The amulet, he hypothesized, contained a hidden document, perhaps a map or formula, sought by the cloaked figure, a remnant of Crane's buyer network. The crescent moon letters were warnings, not from a protector, but from someone desperate to keep the amulet hidden. "The killer of Crane, she is in custody," Poirot told Hastings, "but the shadow of his greed lives on." He instructed Dr. Winslow to secure the amulet in the museum's vault, under police guard, until its secrets could be studied safely. As night fell, Poirot stood in the grand hall, the Anubis statue looming overhead. The crescent moon outside cast a silvery glow through the windows, mirroring the amulet's symbol. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, "the little grey cells, they see a pattern, but it is incomplete. This amulet, it whispers of empires and secrets. We must watch and wait." Hastings, ever practical, suggested alerting the authorities, but Poirot shook his head. "The truth, it reveals itself in time. For now, we protect." The museum, under Dr. Winslow's care, braced for a new chapter, its staff united by the resolve to move beyond Crane's legacy. Yet, the cloaked figure's shadow lingered, a reminder that some relics carried curses not of magic, but of human ambition. Poirot, his eyes bright with the thrill of the chase, knew this was not the end. "C'est la vie, Hastings," he said, sipping his hot chocolate. "The mystery, it never truly sleeps." Narration, warm, suspenseful, inviting. And so, dear listeners, the Moonbridge Museum harbours a new enigma, the lunar amulet casting a shadow of intrigue. Who seeks its secrets? Will Poirot unravel this final thread? Thank you for joining me on this journey through deception and deduction. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share where you're listening from in the comments. Until our next tale, keep your little grey cells sharp and your curiosity burning, just like our beloved Hercule Poirot. Chapter 10. The Light of Truth, the Moonbridge Museum, under the silver glow of a full November moon, stood as a monument to secrets past and present. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit as sharp as his mind, had been drawn back to the museum by the enigma of the lunar amulet, a silver artifact etched with cuneiform, found in a crate marked with a crescent moon. The cryptic letters warning of ruin and the cloaked figure haunting the excavation site had stirred Poirot's curiosity, hinting at a mystery tied to Crane's illicit dealings. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood by his side in the grand hall, where the Anubis statue's stone gaze seemed to challenge Poirot's resolve. "This amulet business, Poirot. Hastings said, rubbing his hands against the chill. "It's as murky as the Thames. Any closer to cracking it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, his green eyes gleaming. "Mon cher Hastings, the truth, it is like the moon. It hides, but it always reveals itself." Dr. Margaret Winslow, the new curator, had secured the amulet in the museum's vault under police guard, but her unease grew with each new letter. The latest, slipped under the museum's door that morning, read, "The guardian of secrets must not be opened, or the past will claim all." The crescent moon symbol, now familiar, adorned the page. Poirot, examining it in the museum's library, noted a faint watermark, a lion's head, barely visible. "C'est intéressant," he murmured. "This paper, it is not common. It speaks of wealth, of intention." Hastings frowned. "A rich villain, then?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, mon ami, or one who wishes us to think so." Poirot's investigation began with the amulet itself, now locked in a steel vault beneath the museum. With Dr. Winslow's permission, he retrieved it, handling the obsidian box with care. Its weight suggested a hidden compartment, and Poirot, using a jeweler's tool, gently pried open a false bottom. Inside lay a folded parchment, its edges brittle, inscribed with cuneiform, and a map of an ancient Mesopotamian city. "Sacre bleu!" Poirot exclaimed. "This is no mere relic. It is a guide to a lost treasury, hidden for centuries." The cuneiform, translated by a scholar friend, spoke of a guardian's hoard, a cachet of gold and shegeb, jewels protected by the amulet's cult. Crane, Poirot deduced, had sought this treasury, his greed driving his illicit sales. The cloaked figure, seen near the excavation site, became Poirot's focus. He questioned Thomas Blake, the night watchman, who had spotted the figure twice. In the rear courtyard, where red clay still clung to the gravel, Thomas described a tall man, his face obscured, carrying a satchel and a crescent-shaped pendant. "He moved like he knew the place," Thomas said, his scarred face tense. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Blake, this man, he is no stranger. He seeks what Crane sought." A search of the courtyard revealed a dropped glove, monogrammed with AR, a new clue pointing to an unknown player. Poirot revisited the excavation site, where the red clay linked Crane to his fatal meeting. A worker recalled the man with the crescent pendant, identifying him as Antoine Renaud, a French antiquities dealer who had met Crane weeks before his death. Renaud, the worker said, had argued about a final payment for a relic. Poirot's mind raced. The initials AR matched the glove. "Mon Dieu," he said to Hastings, "this Renaud, he is our cloaked figure, and the author of the letters." To confirm, Poirot consulted Sir Henry Marwood, whose mention of a foreign dealer matched Renaud's description. In the grand hall, Sir Henry, puffing his cigar, recalled Renaud's visit. "Shifty fellow, always talking about ancient treasures," he said. "Crane trusted him, fool that he was." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Monsieur Marwood, trust, it is a dangerous currency." The lion's head watermark, Poirot learned, was unique to a Parisian stationer, tying Renaud to the letters. Lillian Baxter and Reginald Holt provided further pieces. Lillian, in the restoration wing, remembered Crane receiving a package from Renaud, sealed with a crescent moon. "He hid it quickly," she said, her paint-stained hands steady now. Reginald, in the archive room, found a note in Crane's files referencing Renaud as a partner in the lunar relics acquisition. Crane thought he could outsmart him, Reginald said, his spectacles gleaming. Poirot nodded. "Monsieur Holt, greed blinds even the cleverest." Poirot set a trap for Renaud, suspecting he would attempt to steal the amulet. With Dr. Winslow's cooperation, he spread a rumour that the vault would be opened for cataloguing that night. Under the cover of darkness, Poirot and Hastings hid in the vault room, its steel walls glinting faintly. At midnight, a figure slipped in, cloaked and silent, wielding a lockpick. The crescent pendant gleamed at his throat. "Monsieur Renaud," Poirot called, stepping from the shadows. "Your game, it is over." The police, waiting nearby, seized him. Renaud, unmasked, was a lean man with sharp eyes and a defiant sneer. Under Poirot's questioning, he confessed. "Crane promised me half the treasury," he said. "When he reneged, I warned him through letters to keep the amulet hidden. I didn't kill him, Clara did that, but I wanted my share." The glove, he admitted, was his, dropped in haste. The letters, meant to scare the museum into hiding the amulet, had failed when Poirot intervened. Poirot pieced together the final threads. Crane had acquired the amulet through Renaud, intending to find the treasury alone. Clara's murder, driven by her own fear, was unrelated, but Renaud had exploited the chaos, hoping to steal the amulet unnoticed. The cigarette near the warehouse, a deliberate plant, aimed to shift suspicion to Lang. "Monsieur Renaud," Poirot said, "your greed, it mirrors Crane's, but the little grey cells, they see all." The amulet was secured, its map handed to authorities for ethical excavation. Dr. Winslow vowed to display it transparently, free of Crane's taint. The museum, its staff united, began to shine anew. Poirot, standing in the grand hall, gazed at the Anubis statue. "Mon cher Hastings," he said, "the moon's light reveals, but it is the mind that illuminates." Hastings chuckled. "Another triumph, Poirot. Care for a celebratory pint?" Poirot shuddered. "No, hot chocolate is the elixir of victory."